Marcus Tan, a millionaire, arrived without warning during his family's lunch hour and couldn't believe his eyes. The Mont Blanc leather briefcase slipped from Marcus's fingers and hit the designer rug with a muffled thud, but no one in the dining room heard it. His 3 daughters, the same girls who usually greeted him with formal, distant salutations, were too busy with something he had never witnessed in his own house. They were praying with a genuine smile on their faces. Marcus froze in the doorway, his heart hammering against his ribs, unable to take another step. He had moved his flight from New York forward by 24 hours to surprise his family, expecting to find the usual cold silence of his good-class bungalow, GCB, or perhaps the girls locked in their rooms with the current nannies. However, what his eyes registered defied all logic. There, under the warm glow of the imported crystal chandelier, were Chloe, Janice, and Shanti, his 5-year-old triplets. They were wearing identical, immaculate pastel pink dresses, but what unsettled Marcus was their posture. They were seated properly, their small hands clasped beneath their chins, eyes closed in devotion. Facing them was not Brenda Chia, his fiancée and the girl's future stepmother. It was Siti, the new domestic helper the agency had sent just 3 weeks ago. Siti wore a simple black and white uniform and yellow rubber gloves that contrasted sharply with the elegance of the dining room. But her face radiated a tenderness Marcus had forgotten existed. "Thank you, God, for this day," whispered Shanti, the youngest and most timid of the 3, in a voice so sweet that a lump formed in Marcus's throat. "And thank you for Siti's hands, which prepared our food. And, please," added Chloe, opening one eye to make sure Siti was listening, "make Daddy come home soon, because we miss him, even though he's always working." Marcus felt as if an invisible hand was squeezing his chest. He pressed himself against the hallway wall, hiding in the shadows, feeling like an intruder in his own home. From his hiding spot, he saw Siti open her eyes and give them a smile that illuminated the room more than any luxury lamp. There was no servility in her gesture. There was pure love. On the solid mahogany table was no caviar, no imported salmon, nor the gourmet dishes. Brenda insisted the girls should eat to refine their palate. There was a steaming platter of simple spaghetti with homemade tomato sauce, red and vibrant. The smell of fresh basil and tomato reached him, awakening memories of his own childhood. "Before the millions, before the business, before the coldness." "Very good, my princesses," Siti said softly, serving a generous portion onto each plate. "Now eat up. You need strength to play in the garden later. Remember to blow, it's hot." The girls didn't wait for a second instruction. They grabbed their forks with enthusiasm, laughing among themselves. It was a scene of such overwhelming normality that Marcus's eyes hurt. When was the last time he saw them laugh like that at the table? Whenever he was present, dinners were rigid, supervised by Brenda's critical gaze, who corrected every movement, every elbow on the table, every chewing noise. Here, with Siti, there was respect, but also joy. Marcus loosened his tie, feeling a mix of guilt and gratitude. He was about to step in, reveal his presence, and hug his daughters when the sharp sound of designer heels striking the marble in the foyer stopped him dead. The atmosphere in the dining room instantly changed. The girls stopped laughing, their backs tensed. Siti looked up towards the kitchen door, wiping her smile and adopting an almost defensive, submissive posture. Marcus hugged the shadow of the doorframe even tighter, holding his breath. "What in the world is the meaning of this?" Brenda's voice thundered through the walls, shrill and laced with venom. She entered the dining room like a hurricane of fury, her expensive shawl fluttering behind her and her mobile phone still in hand. Her face, usually impeccably made up for her social media cameras, was disfigured by a grimace of utter disgust as her eyes swept over the table. "I gave you precise instructions, you fool!" Brenda shrieked, completely ignoring the presence of the girls who shrank into their chairs. "I clearly said today was pan-seared Chilean sea bass with asparagus and quinoa. What is this carbohydrate-filled rubbish you're giving them?" Marcus clenched his fists so hard that his nails dug into his palms. He had never heard Brenda use that tone inside the house. Whenever he was present, she was the picture of sweetness, the perfect stepmother who spoke of nutritional education and positive discipline. But the woman screaming now was anything but sweet. She was a monster. "Miss Brenda," Siti attempted to explain, lowering her head, her gloved hands pressed against her apron. The girls didn't want to eat the fish. They hadn't eaten well for 2 days. I thought a little pasta would cheer them up. "You are not here to think," Brenda interrupted, advancing towards the table with a menacing step. "You are here to clean and obey. You are giving them hawker food. Look at them. They'll get fat and lazy like you if they keep eating this rubbish." The impact of those words hit Marcus harder than any slap. He saw Janice's eyes fill with tears. Chloe dropped her fork, trembling. Brenda, blind with rage and arrogance, didn't realize there was a witness in the shadows. She was too busy exercising her power over someone who couldn't defend herself. Marcus felt a cold fury climb his spine, but something told him to wait. He needed to see how far the evil he had welcomed into his home would go. He needed to see the complete truth before acting. The silence that followed Brenda's screams was more terrifying than the noise itself. Only the woman's ragged breathing and Shanti's muffled sob, covering her face with her hands, could be heard. Siti, despite the humiliation, did not back down. She took a subtle step forward, interposing herself between Brenda's fury and the girls, like a human shield dressed in a uniform. "Miss, please," Siti pleaded, her voice trembling but firm. "Shout at me if you want, fire me if you must, but don't talk to the children like that. They are only hungry." Brenda's response was a dry, cruel laugh, devoid of all humanity. She walked to Shanti's chair, grabbed the plate of spaghetti in front of the girl, and with a brusque, contemptuous movement, threw it against the wall. The sound of breaking porcelain was like a gunshot. The red sauce splattered the imported designer wallpaper and stained the immaculate floor, looking like an open wound on the house's perfection. "No one tells me how to treat these brats," Brenda shrieked, pointing an accusing finger at Siti, her perfect manicure gleaming under the light. "And you clean up this mess right now. If I see a single noodle on the floor in 5 minutes, you're out on the street with no pay, and a reference so bad you won't be able to work even cleaning public toilets." The three girls burst into tears in unison, terrified by the sudden violence. Shanti instinctively slid off her chair and ran to Siti, hugging her legs. Chloe and Janice followed, seeking refuge in the only person who offered them security. The image was devastating. The helper kneeling, hugging the 3 millionaire heiresses, staining her uniform with the girls' tears, while the future lady of the house looked down on them with contempt from her height. "Let go of her," Brenda ordered, visibly disgusted by the contact. "You'll get lice or smell of grease. Go to your rooms right now. You are grounded without dinner for being disobedient and for conspiring with this low-class woman." Marcus, from the darkness of the hallway, felt his blood boil. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to go in there and push Brenda out of his house, but his businessman's mind, cold and calculating, took control for one more second. If he went in now, Brenda would cry, invent an excuse, say she was stressed about the wedding, that she only wanted the best for them. He needed her to feel secure in her wickedness. He needed her to completely drop the mask. Siti, with tears in her eyes, stroked Shanti's hair and whispered something in her ear. Marcus strained to hear. "Go, my darlings. Everything will be all right. I'll sneak you some fruit later. Please obey her so she doesn't get angrier." The girls, obedient out of fear, released Siti and walked dejectedly toward the staircase, passing Brenda without looking at her. When the girls disappeared upstairs, Brenda turned to Siti, and her expression changed from rage to a sociopathic coldness. "Listen to me carefully, you pauper," Brenda hissed, moving closer to Siti until she invaded her personal space. "Marcus is back tomorrow. If you dare to tell him a single word of what happened here, or if I see you try to play substitute mummy again, I will make sure you are charged with theft. Do you understand? I have plenty of jewelry that can appear in your bag. And who will the SPF believe? Alejandro Ferrera's fiancé or a simple uneducated helper?" Siti did not look up. She nodded slowly, swallowing her pride to protect her job, likely because she desperately needed the money. She knelt on the floor and began to pick up the broken porcelain pieces and scattered spaghetti with her gloved hands. "Understood, miss," Siti murmured. "That's what I like." "Knowing your place," Brenda said, taking a mirror from her bag to touch up her lipstick as if she hadn't just terrified 3 children. "Now clean this up, it smells cheap in here. I'm going to take a salt bath. I need to get rid of the stress these unbearable children cause me. I wish Marcus would send them to a boarding school in Switzerland once and for all." Brenda spun around and walked out towards the foyer with arrogant steps, passing less than a meter from where Marcus was hiding. He held his breath, smelling her expensive perfume, a scent that he once found seductive and that now churned his stomach. Marcus was left alone in the hallway, looking towards the kitchen. There, under the fluorescent light, Siti was still kneeling, cleaning the mess, but she wasn't crying for herself. Marcus saw her kiss a small photo she took from her pocket and then look up at the ceiling, towards the girls' rooms, with an expression of genuine concern. In that moment, Marcus knew 2 things with absolute certainty. First, the wedding was cancelled, even though Brenda didn't know it yet. And second, he had to find out who this woman in yellow gloves really was. a woman who was willing to endure insults and threats to protect his daughters. The millionaire adjusted his jacket, took a deep breath, and prepared for the hardest act of his life. To pretend he knew nothing, to enter through that door as if he had just arrived, and begin the game that would unmask Brenda forever. He took 2 steps back towards the main entrance, grabbed the doorknob, and turned it hard, making it click. Then he shouted with a falsely cheerful voice that concealed the storm within. "Hello, family! I'm home early! Where are my princesses?" The sound of a cloth falling in the kitchen was immediate. The game had begun. Marcus's shout echoed in the foyer with a false cheer that burned his throat, but the effect was immediate. On the other side of the wall, in the kitchen, the silent chaos of panic erupted. Marcus, motionless next to the front door, strained his ears. He heard Brenda's frantic whisper, so different from the honeyed voice she usually used with him, hissing venomous orders. "Get up, you useless thing. Clean that up now. If you say one word, I'll destroy you." Then the sound of a faucet turned on at full pressure, attempting to drown out any sob or cleaning noise, and the anxious click of her heels against the floor. Marcus counted to 10, giving them time. He needed Brenda to believe his performance was perfect. He looked at himself in the entrance mirror. His face was pale, his eyes dark with contained anger, but he forced a tired smile. It was the smile of a man who works too much and blindly trusts his woman. That would be his mask. "Marcus, my love!" exclaimed Brenda, appearing through the arch of the hallway. The transformation was worthy of an Oscar-winning actress. Seconds before, she was a raging beast. Now she ran towards him with open arms, a radiant smile, and perfectly styled hair. Although Marcus noticed the slight sheen of sweat on her forehead and the ragged breath she was trying to control, she threw herself into his arms, kissing him with a possessive, almost desperate intensity, impregnating him with that expensive perfume that now, to Marcus, smelled like lies. "What a wonderful surprise," she said, pulling back just a few centimeters, her hands stroking the lapels of his suit as if checking he was real. "I thought you were arriving tomorrow. The house is a mess. I'm a wreck. If I had known you were coming, I would have prepared a special dinner." Marcus held her by the waist, feeling the stiffness of her muscles under the silk blouse. His eyes, scanners trained in 1,000 hostile negotiations, searched her eyes for any trace of guilt. He found nothing but a brilliant performance. "I wanted to surprise you all," he replied softly, fighting the urge to push her away. "The trip was shortened. I missed my girls too much." "Where are they?" "I didn't hear anyone come down." Brenda's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, an almost imperceptible twitch at the corner of her lip. "Oh, the girls!" she sighed, placing a hand dramatically on her chest. "Poor things. They were exhausted. They had a very long day with piano and French lessons. I gave them dinner early, and they are already in bed. They insisted on waiting for you, but they were falling asleep. You know how they are, always so disciplined, thanks to me." Marcus felt a pang of pain in his stomach. Lie after lie. He had just seen them crying in the kitchen less than 5 minutes ago. "Sleeping at 7 in the evening?" he asked, raising an eyebrow with simulated skepticism. "That's very early, even for them. It's just that the change in climate has made them a bit run down." Brenda improvised quickly, taking his arm to guide him towards the living room, away from the kitchen. "Let's sit down. I'll pour you a drink. You must be exhausted. Let the helper take care of the bags later." Marcus stopped dead. He gently pulled away from Brenda's grasp. "No, Brenda, I need to see them. I won't be able to rest if I don't give them a goodnight kiss." "But you'll wake them up, darling," she tried, a note of warning in her sweet voice. "It will only be a second." Without waiting for an answer, Marcus climbed the stairs 2 at a time, leaving Brenda standing in the foyer with an expression of calculated panic. As he went up, the silence of the house became unbearable. A house with 3 small children should not be so quiet. Reaching the second-floor hallway, he walked towards the pastel-pink door of the triplets' room. His hand trembled as he touched the cold knob. What would he find on the other side? Fear? Resentment? He opened the door gently. The room was dim, lit only by the moonlight filtering through the window. The 3 beds were occupied, but they were not sleeping. Marcus saw 3 small bundles under the sheets, tense, motionless. The sound of the door opening made one of them let out a small, muffled whimper, as if expecting punishment. "Princesses," he whispered. The effect was electric. The sheets flew back. 3 disheveled little heads peered out simultaneously. Seeing him there, standing in the doorway, with open arms, and not the evil stepmother they expected, there was a second of absolute disbelief. "Daddy!" The cry was unanimous. Chloe, Janice, and Shanti jumped out of their beds barefoot and ran towards him. Marcus fell to his knees on the carpet just in time to receive the impact of the three small bodies crashing into him. They hugged him with desperate force, burying their faces in his neck, in his shirt, clinging to him like shipwrecked sailors to a life raft. Marcus closed his eyes and squeezed them against his chest, feeling his own tears threatening to fall. They smelled of strawberry soap and subtly of the tomato sauce from the kitchen. He noticed Janice was trembling. "I'm here now. I'm here," he murmured, kissing their heads. "Why were you in bed so early?" Brenda said you were tired. Chloe, the oldest and bravest, pulled away slightly. Her eyes were red and swollen. She glanced towards the open door in terror, checking that Brenda was not listening. Then she leaned close to her father's ear and whispered something that broke Marcus's heart into 1,000 pieces, confirming everything he had seen and more. "We're not sleepy, Daddy. We're hungry," she confessed with a broken voice. "She threw our food at the wall, said we were pigs and punished Siti." Marcus felt the world stop. It was one thing to see it from the shadows, and quite another to hear the pain in his daughter's voice. The rage he felt transformed into a cold, lethal determination. "Siti?" he asked, feigning ignorance to make them talk. "The new helper?" "She's good, Daddy." Janice intervened, sniffing. "She hugs us. She made us spaghetti because she knew Brenda's green food makes our tummies hurt. But Brenda yelled at her very badly. She said she was going to put jewelry in her bag so the police would take her away." Marcus caressed his youngest daughter's cheek, wiping away a solitary tear. "No one is going to take anyone away," he promised in a deep voice that conveyed absolute security. "Listen to me closely, my darlings. Daddy is back, and no one, absolutely no one, will ever treat you badly again. Not you, and not Siti. Promise?" asked Janice, holding out her little finger. Marcus intertwined his large finger with her small one. "Blood promise." At that moment, Brenda's shadow fell across the hallway. Marcus saw her out of the corner of his eye before she entered. He quickly stood up, changing his expression from tenderness to one of quiet authority, concealing the volcanic fury within. "Oh, you woke them up," Brenda said from the doorway with a forced smile and eyes fixed on the girls like daggers. "What a shame. They'll be unbearable for school tomorrow." The girls clung to Marcus's legs, using him as a shield. He felt the physical rejection of his daughters towards the woman he planned to marry. There were no longer any doubts. There was no turning back. "They're hungry, Brenda," Marcus said, looking directly into her eyes. His tone was flat, unreadable. "They tell me they haven't eaten dinner." Brenda let out a nervous giggle, waving her hand as if it were a silly matter. "What an imagination they have. They had salmon at 6. It's just that they always want sweets before bed, and I'm strict about sugar. You support me on that, right, darling?" "Health comes first." Marcus held her gaze. He saw fear flash in her pupils. "We're going downstairs," he announced, ignoring her question. "Everyone. We're going to have dinner again, and I want Siti to be there, the helper." Brenda blinked, confused and offended. "Why?" "Her shift is over. She should be in her room resting." "Then have her come back," Marcus ordered, taking Chloe and Shanti by the hand. "I'm very hungry, and I feel like spaghetti." The word hung in the air. Brenda visibly paled. Marcus walked past her, taking his daughters, starting the descent into the hell he was about to unleash to cleanse his house of lies. The dining room was plunged into a deathly silence when Marcus entered with the 3 girls clinging to his hands. The table, which had previously been the scene of a moment of genuine prayer and love, was now empty and cold, completely clean. Brenda had forced Siti to erase every trace of the culinary crime with military efficiency. Not a stain of sauce, not a piece of porcelain remained. Everything gleamed, but the atmosphere was suffocating. Marcus seated the girls in their usual chairs. They moved cautiously, glancing nervously at the kitchen door, expecting the monster to scream again. "Sit down, Brenda," Marcus said, pointing to the chair on his right. It was not an invitation. It was an order. Brenda obeyed, smoothing her skirt with trembling hands. Her perfect wife's smile was beginning to crack at the edges. "Darling, it really is too late for carbohydrates," she tried again, her voice rising an octave with nervousness. "Besides, the girl, Siti, is not a professional cook. If you're hungry, I can order food from that Italian restaurant on the corner. That one you like so much, right?" Marcus cut her off sharply. "I want to see Siti." As if she had been summoned, the kitchen door opened slowly. Siti appeared, looking smaller than she was. She had taken off the stained apron and was wearing her street clothes, a worn but clean gray sweater and old jeans. Her eyes were red, and she held her cheap handbag tightly against her chest, as if it were a shield. Seeing Marcus seated at the head of the table, she stopped dead and lowered her head, expecting the swift dismissal Brenda had promised her. "Good evening, sir," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Marcus watched her closely. He saw the working hands, the humble posture, but above all, he saw how his daughter's eyes lit up when they saw her, despite their fear. "Come closer, Siti," he said, softening his tone imperceptibly. Siti took a few hesitant steps towards the table. Brenda looked at her with an hatred so pure it was almost palpable, telepathically conveying the threat. "Shut up or I will destroy you." "My fiancé tells me the girls already had salmon for dinner," Marcus said, leaning back in his chair and crossing his hands. "But my daughters say they are hungry, and curiously, when I entered the house, I thought I smelled basil and tomato, a very homely scent." Siti looked up, terrified, glanced at Brenda, then at the girls, and finally at Marcus. She was trapped. If she told the truth, Brenda would carry out her threat to accuse her of theft. If she lied, she would betray the girls and her own conscience. "Aye, sir," she stammered, gripping the strap of her bag until her knuckles turned white. "There was a misunderstanding with the menu." "Exactly," Brenda interrupted, slamming her palm on the table. She was confused, Marcus. "I gave her clear instructions, and she decided to do whatever she wanted. She's insubordinate. In fact, I was going to talk to you tomorrow about firing her. She's not safe for the girls." "Lies!" Chloe suddenly shouted, standing up on her chair. Her small face was red with indignation. "You threw the food! You are the bad one, Brenda!" "Chloe!" Brenda shrieked, standing up as if to slap her. "Sit down." Marcus's shout was a thunderclap that made the crystal glasses in the display cabinet vibrate. Brenda fell back into her chair as if her strings had been cut, her mouth agape in absolute shock. Never in the 2 years they had been together had Marcus raised his voice to her like that. The calm, compliant man had vanished. Marcus stood up slowly and walked to where Siti was standing. She stepped back, fearing the anger would be directed at her, but he stopped at a respectful distance. "Siti," he said, looking her in the eyes with intensity. "In this house, honesty is worth more than any title or jewel. Don't be afraid. Tell me what really happened with dinner. No one will harm you. You have my word." Siti looked at the imposing man in front of her. She saw something in his eyes that gave her a glimmer of hope. There was no contempt. There was a plea for truth. She took a breath, ignoring Brenda's murderous gaze burning into her neck. "The girls didn't want the fish, sir," Siti said, in a firmer voice. "They were sad because you weren't here. They were crying. They just wanted something that made them feel at home. I made the pasta with what I found. We were praying to give thanks for the food when Miss Brenda walked in. And then?" Marcus pressed. "Then there was an accident with the plates," Siti said, choosing her words carefully so as not to be cruel, demonstrating a nobility unknown to Brenda. "The food fell." "It fell?" Marcus repeated, turning to Brenda with an ironic, dangerous smile. "It fell against the wall, Brenda, because as I was coming up the stairs, I noticed a red stain on the skirting board near the door that you forgot to clean up in your haste." Brenda was speechless. Her face turned from the red of anger to the white of terror. She had been discovered in a foolish lie, but she still believed she could manipulate him. "I was stressed," Brenda began to whine, forcing tears. "You don't understand the pressure of running this house. These girls are difficult. They provoke me. Don't blame 5-year-old children for your lack of control," he cut her off icily. "Siti, please go to the kitchen, prepare that pasta again, and this time, make enough for 5. I will also have dinner with you." "5?" Brenda asked incredulously. "You're going to let the helper eat at our table, Marcus? This is unheard of. It's a lack of respect for me." Marcus leaned over the table, placing his hands on the tablecloth, bringing his face close to his fiancée's until their noses almost touched. "The lack of respect, Brenda, is leaving my daughters hungry. The lack of respect is screaming in my house. If you don't want to share the table with the woman who feeds and cares for my daughters with the love you lack, you are free to retire to your room. Or better yet, you can go to a hotel." The silence that followed was dense and heavy. Brenda, humiliated and cornered, pressed her lips together. She knew that if she left now, she would lose the war. She had to stay. She had to fix this. She swallowed her pride, which tasted like bile. "I'll stay," she said through gritted teeth, "just to show you that I can be magnanimous." Marcus did not smile. He turned to Siti, who was still standing there, stunned to have been defended. "Please, Siti, we're hungry." Siti nodded, a shy, grateful smile illuminating her tired face. "Right away, sir." As Siti disappeared into the kitchen and the sound of pots began to chime like a melody of hope, Marcus sat down again. He took Chloe's hand. She was looking at him with absolute adoration. He had won the first battle, but he knew the war was just beginning. Brenda was silent, but her eyes, fixed on the tablecloth, were plotting revenge. Marcus knew she wouldn't give up so easily. He needed to be vigilant. The clock in Siti's pocket, that threat he had heard from the shadows, was still a card Brenda hadn't played, and he had to make sure he intercepted it before it was too late. The door to the master bedroom closed with a soft, definitive click, isolating the couple from the rest of the mansion. The air inside the room was charged, dense, as if an electrical storm was about to erupt between the 4 silk wallpapered walls. Marcus loosened his tie with a brusque gesture, feeling like he was choking, and slumped onto the edge of the king-size bed. He was exhausted. The trip, the surprise, the tension at dinner, and the image of his daughters devouring spaghetti, as if it were the last delicacy on earth, had drained his energy. But his mind did not rest. It replayed the kitchen scene again and again, Siti's terrified look and Brenda's unbridled fury. Brenda, for her part, did not scream. She knew she had crossed a dangerous line in the dining room, and that her position, until now secure as the future Mrs. Tan, hung by a thread. She needed to change tactics. Aggression had failed. It was time for calculated victimization. She sat in front of her vanity, turning her back to Marcus, and began to brush her hair with slow, rhythmic movements. In the mirror's reflection, Marcus saw a solitary, perfect tear roll down her cheek. "Are you going to keep punishing me with your silence?" she asked, her voice broken, just soft enough to sound vulnerable. Marcus sighed, rubbing his temples. "I'm not punishing you, Brenda. I'm trying to understand what I saw downstairs today. It wasn't discipline. It was cruelty. Those girls are afraid of you." Brenda turned on her stool, facing him. Her eyes were moist, an image of misunderstood pain. "Afraid? No, Marcus, they respect me. Or at least they did until that woman arrived." She stood up and walked towards him, kneeling on the carpet between his legs, placing her hands on his knees. "You have to listen to me. I know I looked like a witch down there. I lost my temper, I admit it, and I feel terrible about it. But you haven't been here these last 3 weeks. You haven't seen what I've seen." Marcus looked at her skeptically, but willing to listen. He wanted to believe the woman he was going to marry was not a monster. "What have you seen?" he asked. Brenda took a breath as if it pained her to confess a dark secret. "Siti is not what she seems. Yes, she's affectionate, too affectionate. Marcus, that woman has an unhealthy obsession with your daughters. At first I thought it was diligence, but it has become disturbing." "Disturbing? She made them dinner because they were hungry." "That's not disturbing. That's human." "It's not just dinner," Brenda insisted, squeezing his hands. "It's the way she looks at them. It's the way she talks to them. She tells them she's their only friend. She fills their heads with ideas against me to isolate them. What happened today, the spaghetti, was not an act of kindness. It was an act of sabotage. She knew perfectly well that the pediatrician recommended a low-sugar, low-flour diet for Janice because of her allergies, but she did it anyway so the girls would love her and hate me when I tried to correct it." Marcus frowned. He didn't know about new allergies. Janice has mild allergies, but they exist, and that woman deliberately ignores them. Brenda lowered her voice, turning it into a conspiratorial whisper. "And there's something else. The other day I found her in the girls' room when they weren't there. She was smelling their clothes, stroking their toys with a lost look. Marcus, I think that woman lost a child, or has some psychological trauma. She's projecting her frustrated motherhood onto your daughters. She's trying to replace me, and worse, she's trying to replace you too, making them believe she's the only one who cares for them." Doubt settled in Marcus's chest like a poisonous seed. Brenda's manipulation was masterful, mixing half-truths with lies designed to hit his weak spots, the safety of his daughters, and his own absence as a father. If Siti was truly unstable, if her affection was the product of a pathological obsession, then he had let the enemy into his house. The girls seemed happy with her, Marcus argued, but with less force than before. "Children are easily manipulated with sweets and permissiveness, Marcus." Brenda stood up, stroking his cheek tenderly. "I'm the one who sets boundaries, the one who worries about their education, their health, their future. That makes me the villain in the short term, but it's what a responsible mother does. Siti is the fun friend who lets them do whatever they want. Of course, they prefer her, but is that what they need? An uneducated helper raising the heiresses of the Tan Empire?" Marcus got up and walked to the window, looking out at the dark garden. The rain had started to fall, hitting the glass. "I don't know what to believe, Brenda. What I saw in her eyes today seemed like pure love." "Psychopaths are the best actors, my love," Brenda declared, approaching from behind and hugging him by the waist, resting her head on his back. "I only ask you for one thing. Don't make hasty decisions. Observe her. But observe her for real, not just when she knows you are watching. You'll see that I'm right. You'll see that that woman is a silent danger. And when you see it, I promise I'll be here to help you fix the mess she's caused in their little heads." Marcus stared at his own reflection in the dark glass. The image of Siti praying with the girls clashed violently with the description of the unbalanced woman Brenda painted. But Brenda was his fiancée, the woman he had trusted for 2 years. Could he be so blind? "All right," he finally said, his voice tired. "I'll observe her. But I'm warning you, Brenda. If I discover you are lying to me, if I discover this is just jealousy or cruelty, there will be no second chance." Brenda smiled against the back of his suit, a cold, victorious smile that he couldn't see. "I won't need one, my love. The truth will come out on its own." That night, Marcus slept little. He stayed awake, listening to the rain, his mind divided between a father's intuition and the logic of a manipulated man. Meanwhile, in the basement service room, Siti cried silently into her pillow, clutching a wrinkled photo of her own son, far away in the village, praying not to lose the job that allowed her to send money for his medicine. Brenda slept soundly beside him, dreaming of the moment she would throw the rubbish out of her house. What neither of them knew was that Marcus already had a plan. He wasn't going to wait for the truth to come out on its own. He was going to find it. The gray light of dawn barely filtered through the heavy curtains of Marcus's private study. It was 6 in the morning. The house was still plunged in the deep silence of the early hours, but Marcus was already dressed, with a mug of black coffee in his hand, and his eyes fixed on the wall in front of him. He hadn't gone to the office. He had called his secretary to cancel all meetings for the day with an excuse of a family emergency. Today, his only meeting was with the truth. In front of him, a series of high-definition monitors showed every corner of the GCB in real time. Months ago, he had installed a state-of-the-art internal security system, supposedly to protect against theft or kidnapping, given his public profile. Brenda knew about the cameras at the entrances and in the hallways, but she didn't know that Marcus, in an attack of paranoia months ago, had installed discrete cameras and microphones in the common areas, the playroom, the kitchen, and the dining room. He had never used them to spy on his family. Until today. "Let's see who you really are, Siti," he murmured to himself, taking a sip of the bitter coffee. Screen number 3 came to life. It was the kitchen. Siti entered the frame at 6:15 a.m. She was already uniformed, immaculate. Marcus zoomed in on her face, looking for the signs of madness or obsession Brenda spoke of. He only saw tiredness and determination. Siti crossed herself before starting, put water to boil, and began to chop fresh fruit with quick dexterity. There were no strange gestures. She didn't talk to herself. She prepared 3 lunchboxes with handwritten notes that she slipped inside each one. Marcus adjusted the audio. "Have a beautiful day, my little angels," Siti whispered, as she closed Shanti's lunchbox. At 7 a.m., the dynamic changed. Brenda entered the kitchen. She was wearing a silk robe and a facial mask. She didn't even look at Siti. She went straight to the espresso machine. "The coffee is cold," Brenda said without tasting it, in a tone of disgust. "Make another one, and I hope the girls are ready by now. I have yoga at 9, and I don't intend to be late because of their morning tantrums." "Yes, miss, the girls are coming down now," Siti replied submissively, emptying the freshly made coffee to start again without complaining. On monitor 4, the living room, the triplets appeared. They came down the stairs in their school uniforms, dragging their backpacks. They looked sleepy and sad. Marcus felt an urge to run out and hug them, but he forced himself to stay in the chair. He needed to see the complete interaction. The girls entered the kitchen. Monitor 3. Brenda was checking her Instagram, her back to them. "Good morning, Brenda," Chloe said politely. Brenda made a guttural sound without looking up from her phone. "Eat quickly, the driver is waiting in 10 minutes, and don't stain yourselves, for goodness sake." The girls sat down dejectedly. Siti approached the table with plates of fruit and oatmeal. The moment Siti approached, the girls' energy shifted. It was subtle, but Marcus saw it clearly on the high-definition screen. Their shoulders relaxed. Janice gave the helper a quick smile. "Will you braid my hair, Siti?" Shanti asked, touching a messy braid. "It hurts when I do it myself." "I don't have time for that, Shanti," Brenda snapped from the counter. "Siti has to clean the toilets before 8. Siti looked at the wall clock, then at Brenda, and finally at the little girl with pleading eyes. Ignoring the implicit order to stay away, Siti pulled a small comb from her apron pocket. "Come here, my dear," Siti said in a very low voice, almost inaudible to Brenda, but perfectly captured by the system's sensitive microphone. "We'll do it super fast. Speedy hand magic." Shanti got off her chair and went to her. Siti began to comb her hair with a delicacy that broke Marcus's soul. There were no rushed tugs. Siti held the root of the hair so it wouldn't hurt. She passed the comb smoothly, and as she did, she adjusted the collar of the shirt. It was an act of absolute maternal intimacy. "Siti," Janice asked, chewing a piece of melon, "why doesn't Daddy eat breakfast with us? Is it because he was angry last night?" Marcus held his breath in his study. "No, my dear," Siti replied, finishing Shanti's braid and tying a perfect pink ribbon. "Your daddy loves you with all his heart. He has to work very hard to take care of this big house. But last night I saw him looking at you as if you were his greatest treasure. He is not angry, he is tired, but he adores you." Brenda says, "We are a burden," Chloe muttered, stabbing her fruit with a fork. Brenda, on the other side of the kitchen, was recording a voice note on her phone and didn't hear the comment, but Marcus felt a physical blow to his chest. Siti crouched down to Chloe's level, taking her small hands in her yellow gloves. "Look at me, Chloe. Never ever believe that. You are a gift. Sometimes adults say silly things when they are stressed, but you are wonderful, smart, and good girls. Anyone would be the luckiest person in the world to be your daddy or mummy." "Would you want to be our mummy?" Shanti asked innocently. The silence in Marcus's study was absolute. In the kitchen, Siti smiled sadly, a smile full of pain and love. "I am your friend, my life, and I will always be here to take care of you as long as God and your daddy let me. Now eat everything. You need energy to learn a lot today." Siti stood up, kissed each forehead quickly before Brenda turned around and returned to the sink. Marcus sank back into his leather chair, his eyes full of tears. Unhealthy obsession, Brenda had said. Dangerous. What he had just witnessed was the purest proof of selfless love he had seen in years. Siti wasn't trying to steal his daughters. She was filling the emotional void that he and Brenda had left. She was saving their hearts. Brenda, on the other hand, was a wall of ice, a woman who prioritized her yoga class over braiding a 5-year-old's hair and called them a burden. Rage returned to Marcus, but this time it was a cold, calculated rage. He no longer had doubts. He knew what he had to do. But then he saw something on the monitor that chilled him. Brenda had turned around abruptly. She seemed to have noticed the final exchange of smiles. Her eyes narrowed as she looked at Siti's back. Marcus recognized that look. It was the look of someone who has just drawn up a plan of destruction. Brenda walked towards the table, picked up her designer bag, and with a quick movement of prestidigitation, slipped something shiny from her wrist. Marcus leaned towards the screen, squinting. What was Brenda doing? She walked towards where Siti had left her cheap cloth bag on a chair in the corner while cleaning. Taking advantage of the fact that Siti had her back turned, washing the dishes, and the girls were gathering their backpacks, Brenda dropped the shiny object inside Siti's open bag. It was a matter of a second. Then Brenda smiled to herself, a macabre smile, and shouted, "Girls, let's go. The car is here. Siti, I want this kitchen spotless when I return." Marcus slammed his fist on the desk. He had seen it. He had seen the trap live. Brenda had just planted the evidence. The gold watch, the accusation of theft she had threatened to make. The millionaire jumped up, spilling coffee on the documents. His first instinct was to run to the kitchen and unmask her right there before they left, but he stopped with his hand on the doorknob. If he intervened now, it would be his word against hers, a scandal in front of the girls before they went to school. The girls would leave crying, traumatized by another fight. He had to be smarter. He had the recording. He had the irrefutable proof of the crime. He would let Brenda execute her play. He would let her believe she was victorious. He would let her put on the show during dinner when she thought she had total control. And then, when she was at the height of her arrogance, he would destroy her with the truth in front of everyone. Marcus looked at the monitor one last time. Siti was alone in the kitchen, wiping the sweat from her forehead, oblivious to the time bomb she carried in her bag. "Hold on a little longer, Siti," Marcus whispered to the screen. "Justice will be served tonight, and I swear it will be ruthless." Marcus turned off the monitors, straightened his jacket, and left the study. The hunter had become the prey, but Brenda didn't know it yet. The final game had begun. The day passed with agonizing slowness, as if time itself had thickened inside the tan GCB. Outside, the sky had completely closed in, unleashing a thunderstorm that made the double-glazed windows vibrate, plunging the house into a grey gloom. Inside, the tension was even more electric. Marcus spent most of the day locked in his study, pretending to review contracts and make international calls. But in reality, he didn't take his eyes off the security monitors for a second. He was a lion stalking from the bushes, waiting for the exact moment to pounce. Brenda returned mid-afternoon, laden with exclusive shopping bags, humming an off-key tune. She seemed to have forgotten the morning's incident. Or perhaps her confidence in the plan she had executed was so absolute that she already felt victorious. Marcus watched her through the screen as she entered the kitchen, deliberately ignoring Siti, who was quietly ironing the girls' uniforms with dedication. Brenda walked past, opened the refrigerator, grabbed a bottle of imported water, and before leaving, accidentally kicked the clean laundry basket that Siti had just tidied. "Oops," Brenda said without turning around, her voice loaded with sarcasm. "How clumsy of me. Pick it up, Siti, and make sure it has no lint." Marcus hates dirty clothes. Siti did not respond. She sighed deeply, crouched down, and began to pick up the white shirts, carefully shaking them out. Marcus, from his desk, felt his jaw clench. Brenda's cruelty was not just wickedness. It was a sport for her. She enjoyed humiliating someone she considered inferior. At 4 in the afternoon, the school bus dropped the triplets at the door. Marcus went down to the foyer to greet them, intercepting them before Brenda could. The girls came in, shaking their wet umbrellas, their cheeks flushed from the cold. "Daddy!" they shouted when they saw him running towards him. Marcus hugged them, inhaling the smell of rain and childhood, but he immediately noticed something. Their eyes were searching for something behind him. They were looking for Siti. "Where is she?" Shanti asked in a whisper, pulling her father's sleeve. "She's in the kitchen preparing a snack," Marcus replied, winking. "Go on, but don't make too much noise. Brenda is resting." The girls ran towards the kitchen as if it were an air raid shelter. Marcus followed at a prudent distance and stopped next to the half-open door. What he saw confirmed to him once again that he was on the right side. Siti received them with warm towels, drying their damp hair, while asking about their homework, their friends, their drawings. She served them hot milk with cocoa and homemade biscuits. There were no screams, no demands for perfection. There was only the warmth of home. "Siti," Chloe said, her mouth full of chocolate. "I drew a picture of my family today." The girl took a crumpled paper from her backpack. In the drawing, made with childish, colorful strokes, there were 5 figures. A tall man with a tie, Marcus, 3 little girls in pink dresses, and a woman in a black dress and yellow gloves, holding a giant heart. Brenda was not in the drawing. Siti looked at the paper, and her eyes filled with tears. "It's beautiful, my darling. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," she said with a broken voice, pressing the drawing against her chest. "But you have to be careful with this. If Miss Brenda sees it, she'll be sad because she's not in it." "She's not my family," Chloe declared, with a maturity that was frightening. "She's Daddy's fiancée, but she doesn't love us." "You do." Marcus had to step away from the door so they wouldn't see him cry. His daughter's innocence had grasped the truth long before he had. He walked up the stairs to his room, determined. Everything would end tonight. Reaching the bedroom, he found Brenda in front of the full-length mirror, trying on a tight, provocative blood-red dress. She turned when she saw him enter, with that predatory smile he once mistook for passion. "Hello, darling," she said, approaching to kiss him. "I was thinking, tonight we should have a formal dinner, just us and the girls, to celebrate us all being together. I want it to be special." Marcus looked her in the eyes. They were cold, calculating. He knew exactly why she wanted a formal dinner. She wanted a stage. She wanted an audience for her masterpiece. "That sounds like an excellent idea," he replied, with a calmness that surprised even himself. "A special dinner. Perfect. I'll tell Siti to set the table with the silver cutlery and the crystal glasses," Brenda said, returning to the mirror. "And to serve it herself. I want everything to be impeccable." "Of course, she should serve," Marcus replied. Brenda didn't notice the irony in Marcus's voice. She was too busy admiring her own reflection, imagining how things would look without the helpers' competition. The next day, she put on diamond earrings, adjusted the dress, and touched up her makeup. She was preparing for war, disguised as a party. While Brenda got ready, Marcus went to his safe, took out a small portable digital recorder, and put it in the inside pocket of his jacket. Then he went down to the kitchen one last time. Siti was nervous, taking out the expensive tableware with trembling hands. "Don't worry, Siti," Marcus said as he passed, gently touching her shoulder. Just do your job as always. Everything is going to be all right. Trust me." Siti looked at him, confused by the intensity of his tone, but she nodded. "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." Marcus went out to the garden in the rain, lighting a cigarette, even though he had quit years ago, and looked up at the illuminated dining room window. Dinner was 30 minutes away. 30 minutes until Brenda's trap would be activated. 30 minutes until his life would change forever. He threw the half-smoked cigarette away, crushing it hard against the wet paving, and walked in. It was time. The dining room gleamed under the light of the crystal chandelier. The table was set with millimeter-precision white linen tablecloths, polished silver, and a centerpiece with red roses that seemed to bleed under the artificial light. However, the air was so dense it was hard to breathe. The triplets were seated in their places, dressed in their best Sunday dresses, but their faces reflected not celebration, but fear. They kept their hands in their laps, not daring to touch anything, glancing nervously at Brenda, who presided over the table with a glass of red wine in her hand. Marcus occupied the opposite head of the table. His face was a marble mask. He ate mechanically, cutting his meat with precise movements, tasting nothing. His eyes traveled from Brenda to Siti, who was serving water with nervous efficiency, trying to make herself invisible. "The roast is a bit dry, don't you think, darling?" Brenda broke the silence, setting down her glass with a sharp clink. "I suppose it's too much to ask for the staff to know how to cook medium rare." Marcus put his cutlery down on the plate. "I think it's delicious, Brenda. The girls are eating all of it. That's what's important." Brenda let out a forced little laugh. "Of course, always so compliant. You are too good, Marcus. That's why people take advantage of you." She shot a sharp glance towards Siti, who was refilling Chloe's water glass. "Careful, don't spill anything on the girl's dress. It's Italian silk. It's worth more than a year of your salary." Siti's hand trembled slightly, but she managed to finish serving without incident. "Thank you, Siti," Chloe said softly, defying her future stepmother with her gaze. Brenda pressed her lips together, clearly irritated by the girl's loyalty to the helper. She looked at her wristwatch, or rather, she looked at her bare wrist. The moment had arrived. Marcus saw her eyes open in a gesture of exaggerated theatrical surprise. "Oh," Brenda exclaimed, touching her wrist and then her neck. "It can't be." Everyone at the table jumped. The girls stopped eating. "What's wrong?" Marcus asked, leaning back in his chair, observing the performance. "My bracelet," Brenda shouted, standing up suddenly, nearly knocking over her chair. "The diamond and sapphire bracelet you gave me for our anniversary, I don't have it." She began to frantically pat herself down, checking the floor around her chair, moving the napkins violently. "Surely you left it on your vanity," Marcus said calmly. "I saw you putting on your earrings a while ago." No, she insisted, her voice rising in pitch. "I had it on when I came down. I remember perfectly fastening it before leaving the room. I came straight to the kitchen to supervise." She stopped dead, her eyes fixed on Siti like two daggers. To supervise this woman. Siti, who was collecting the dirty dishes at the sideboard, froze. Her face lost all color. "Miss, I haven't seen anything," she stammered, pressing the tray against her chest. "You!" Brenda walked towards her, pointing an accusing finger. "You were hovering around me all afternoon when I accidentally knocked over the dirty laundry. You bent down near me." "Brenda, please," Marcus intervened, standing up but not moving closer. "You are distressed. Don't accuse without proof." "Proof?" Brenda turned to him, her eyes wide with feigned fury. "You always defend her. It's obvious it was her. She's a pauper who's been looking at my jewels with envy since she arrived. Marcus, that bracelet cost $50,000. I demand you search her belongings right now." "I don't have anything." "I swear to God," Siti cried, backing away until she hit the wall. The girls started to cry in their chairs, terrified. "Shut up, thief," Brenda shrieked. "If you don't have it, then empty your bag. I want to see what's in that rotten bag you carry everywhere now." The silence that followed was terrible. Only Shanti's sobs could be heard. Marcus walked slowly towards Siti, stopping in front of her, blocking Brenda's view for a moment. He looked the trembling woman in the eyes and whispered, "Do it, Siti, trust me." Siti, her hands shaking so much she could barely coordinate, walked to the chair where she had left her cloth bag while serving dinner. She picked it up. Brenda approached like a vulture, snatching it from her hands before she could open it. "Let me," Brenda yelled. With a violent movement, Brenda dumped the bag onto the dining room table, right onto the immaculate white tablecloth. An old wallet, a wooden rosary, a packet of tissues, some keys, and with a heavy, shiny metallic sound, The diamond and sapphire bracelet fell out. The glitter of the jewels under the lamp seemed to blind everyone for a second. "Aha!" Brenda shouted triumphantly, pointing at the jewel as if it were a trophy. "There it is! I knew it! I knew it! You are a dirty thief!" Siti brought her hands to her mouth, stifling a scream of horror. "No, I didn't put that there. I swear to you, Mr. Marcus. It wasn't me!" she cried desperately, falling to her knees on the floor, pleading. "Someone must have put it there. I would never steal. Stop lying." Brenda turned to Marcus with a poorly disguised smile of satisfaction beneath her mask of indignation. "There's your proof, Marcus. We caught her red-handed, stealing in our own house in front of your daughters. Are you still going to defend her now? Call the SPF. I want her to rot in jail." The girls jumped out of their chairs. Chloe ran to Siti and hugged her, sobbing loudly. "It's not true, Siti is good," the girl cried, protecting the helper with her small body. "You are the liar, Brenda. Get that child away from there," Brenda ordered, losing her patience. "Marcus, do something. This is a circus. Fire her and call the police. There are no more doubts. She is a criminal." Marcus looked at the scene. He looked at the bracelet shining obscenely on the table. He looked at his fiancée, whose face was distorted by triumph and malice. And he looked at Siti, kneeling, hugging his daughter, an image of Pietà in a domestic version. The millionaire picked up the bracelet from the table, weighing it in his hand. It was cold. "You are right, Brenda," Marcus said, with a voice so deep it made the floor vibrate. "There are no more doubts. This is a crime, and someone is going to pay dearly for what happened at this table tonight." Brenda smiled, crossing her arms, waiting to see Siti ushered out. "Exactly, my love. Do the right thing." Marcus looked up and fixed his black eyes on Brenda. "Siti," he said, without taking his eyes off his fiancée. "Get up." Siti obeyed, sobbing, helped by Chloe. "Marcus, what are you doing?" Brenda asked, her smile fading as she noticed his strange tone. "Why are you speaking to her with respect? She is a thief." "Is she?" Marcus asked, taking a step towards Brenda. He took his hand out of his jacket pocket. He didn't have a phone to call the police. He had a small remote control. "Brenda, before calling the police, I think there is something we should all see." "What are you talking about?" Marcus pointed the remote control at the large flat-screen TV embedded in the back wall of the dining room, usually off during meals. "On," Marcus said. The black screen came to life. A sharp, high-definition image appeared. It was the kitchen. The date and time in the upper right corner read 7:15 a.m. that same morning. On the screen, the empty kitchen could be seen, except for Siti, who was scrubbing dishes with her back turned. And then Brenda walked in. The real Brenda, standing in the dining room, turned pale as a corpse. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. In the video, everyone saw the Brenda on the screen. Look around, approach Siti's bag stealthily, take the bracelet from her own wrist, and drop it into the open bag. Then she smiled at the invisible camera with pure malice, before shouting to call the girls. The video ended, and the screen froze on that wicked smile. The silence in the dining room was absolute, broken only by the hum of the television. The girls looked at the screen with wide eyes. Siti covered her mouth, finally understanding the trap. Marcus slowly turned to Brenda, who was trembling, backing away step by step towards the exit. "Explain this to me, Brenda," Marcus said with a terrifying calmness. "Explain to me why the woman who was going to be my wife and the mother of my daughters is planting false evidence to frame an innocent woman whose only crime has been to give them love." Brenda hit the sideboard. She was cornered. There was no lie that could save her from her own image in 4K. "Marcus, I can explain. It's a setup," she stammered desperately. "Shut up." Marcus's shout was so powerful that Brenda physically flinched. Not one more word of lies in this house. Marcus walked to the front door and opened it wide. The storm outside roared fiercely. Wind and rain entered the foyer. "Get out," he said, pointing to the darkness. "Now." Brenda started to cry, this time genuinely, tears of fear and humiliation. "Marcus, it's raining. I have nowhere to go. I am your fiancé." "You are nothing anymore," he declared. "You have 5 minutes to take your things before I call the SPF and hand over that video as proof of slander, defamation, and child abuse. And believe me, with my lawyers, I guarantee you'll spend a long time in jail." Brenda looked around, seeking support, but only found Marcus's contempt, the girl's fear, and the dignified gaze of Siti, who had stood up, wiping her tears. "You'll pay for this!" Brenda shouted, recovering one last ounce of venom as she ran towards the stairs to get her bag. "All of you are pathetic." Marcus slammed the door shut when she went up, letting the sound of her heels disappear upstairs. Then he turned to the table where his 4 women were looking at him. He approached Siti, who was still trembling. "Forgive me, Siti," he said, taking her hands gently. "I had to let it get this far so she couldn't deny anything. I am so sorry I put you through this." Siti, her eyes full of gratitude, shook her head. "Don't worry, sir. Thank you. Thank you for believing me." Marcus looked at his daughters, who ran to hug him and Siti in a giant group embrace. For the first time in years, the tan GCB didn't feel cold. It finally felt like a clean home. But Marcus knew the wound was deep, and the night was not yet over. The cycle needed to be closed. The storm outside the tan GCB seemed to have entered Brenda's soul. As she went up the stairs to the master bedroom, her steps were not those of a defeated woman, but of a wounded and dangerous beast. Marcus followed her closely, ensuring she didn't harm anything or anyone on her way out. The girls had stayed downstairs, hugging Siti on the living room sofa, trembling not from the cold, but from the emotional violence they had just witnessed. Entering the bedroom, Brenda didn't look for a suitcase. She turned to Marcus, her mascara running, smudging her perfect cheeks, transforming her face into a grotesque mask of hatred. "You think this is over, Marcus?" she spat, throwing her designer bag onto the bed in fury. "You think you can kick me out like a dog and rest easy with your perfect helper?" "I'm kicking you out because you are a criminal and an abuser," Marcus replied in an icy voice, leaning on the doorframe, arms crossed. "You're lucky I haven't called the SPF yet. Be grateful, I don't want my daughters to see you handcuffed. Pack your bag. I want you out in 3 minutes." Brenda let out a hysterical laugh, a high-pitched sound that chilled Marcus's blood. She started ripping clothes from the hangers in her walk-in closet, throwing silk dresses and fur coats onto the floor in a messy pile. "Police?" she scoffed, frantically stuffing jewelry into a case. "Do it, call them, and when they arrive, I'll tell them you forced me to do it. I'll tell them you're an abuser, that you hit me, and that you're having an affair with that dirty kampong woman you have in the kitchen." Marcus clenched his jaw. "No one will believe you. I have the video." "The video only shows a bracelet, Marcus. But the press." Brenda stopped and looked at him with eyes shining with malice. "The press loves a good scandal. Magnate Tan leaves his high society fiancée for the maid. Can you imagine the headlines? Can you imagine what your company's partners will say? Your stock will plummet before morning. And best of all, Child Protective Services." Marcus took a step forward, feeling a knot in his stomach. "What does Child Protective Services have to do with this?" "Everything," Brenda hissed, approaching him until she invaded his space, emanating a sour smell of fear and expensive perfume. "I'm going to report that this house is not a suitable environment for the girls. I'll say their father is absent and leaves them in the care of an uneducated woman with no proper papers who probably has a record. They'll take the girls, Marcus, I swear on my life. If I go down, you go down with me, and those girls will end up in a children's home." The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus knew Brenda was partly bluffing, but he also knew that her influence in high society and her lawyers could do a lot of damage. A public scandal could put the triplets' custody at risk, at least temporarily, and that was something he couldn't allow. "Get out," Marcus said in a dangerous whisper. "Get out before I lose what little chivalry I have left and drag you out by your hair." Brenda closed her suitcase with a sharp bang, slung her bag over her shoulder, and walked towards the door, passing him. She paused for a second, brushing his arm. "I'm leaving, but remember my words. That woman is your ruin. She will cost you your daughters." Marcus watched her go downstairs. He saw the girls hide behind the sofa when they saw her pass. He saw Brenda look at Siti one last time with a smile of, "This is not over," before opening the front door and disappearing into the rainy night. The final slam of the door echoed throughout the house, closing a chapter but opening a wound. Marcus went down the stairs and went straight to his daughters. He hugged them tightly, kissing their heads. "She's gone. She won't come back." "Are we safe, really, Daddy?" Janice asked with wide eyes. "Really? Blood promise." Siti was standing next to the kitchen door, nervously wiping her hands on her apron. She was pale. She had heard the screams from upstairs. The mansion's acoustics were treacherous. Brenda's threats about Child Protective Services and losing the girls had reached her ears clearly. Marcus approached her. "Siti, don't listen to what that crazy woman said. You are safe here. No one will take you out of this house." Siti nodded, but didn't look him in the eyes. Her heart was pounding hard. "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Do you want me to prepare anything else for the girls? They must be hungry after all this." "No, rest. It's been a horrible day. I'll take the girls to bed. Go to sleep, Siti. You deserve it." Marcus went upstairs with the girls. trying to convey normality. But downstairs, in the solitude of the kitchen, Siti didn't go to rest. She slumped into a chair, trembling. Brenda's words resonated in her head like a death sentence. "That woman is your ruin. She will cost you your daughters." Siti looked around, looked at the luxury, the security, the warmth of that home she had come to love in such a short time. She was just a humble helper. Marcus was a powerful man. If Brenda carried out her threats, if the press attacked, if someone came to investigate, she would be to blame for those 3 girls being separated from their father. She was the weak point. She was the stain on the perfect reputation of the Tans. "I can't do this to them," Siti whispered into the void, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I can't let them take his daughters because of me. I love them too much to be their misfortune." She stood up with a painful determination. She went up to her small service room. She didn't turn on the light. She took her old suitcase from under the bed and began to pack her few belongings. 2 uniforms, a pair of jeans, the photo of her son, and the drawing Chloe had given her that afternoon. At 3 a.m., when the house was silent and the storm had subsided to a sad drizzle, Siti crept up to the 2nd floor. She entered the triplets' room. All 3 were sleeping peacefully, oblivious to the sacrifice taking place. Siti approached each one, kissing their foreheads softly so as not to wake them, letting her tears fall onto the pillows. "Forgive me, my darlings," she whispered, her voice choked with pain. "It's to protect you. You'll understand someday. Be good, eat everything, don't forget to pray." She left the room with a broken heart, feeling like she was leaving her life right there. She went down the stairs, left a note on the kitchen table next to her set of keys, and slipped out the back door. The cold night received her, and as she walked towards the night bus stop, Siti didn't look back, knowing that if she did, she wouldn't have the strength to leave. The morning sun streamed fiercely through the dining room windows, a cruel contrast to the darkness that was about to descend upon the Tan family. Marcus woke up with a sense of lightness he hadn't felt in years. Brenda was gone. The nightmare was over. For the first time, he felt in control of his life and his home. He showered humming, dressed in comfortable clothes, and went downstairs, eager to see his daughters. And if he was honest with himself, eager to see the sweet-eyed woman who had defended his family tooth and nail. He expected to find the smell of freshly brewed coffee and the sound of laughter in the kitchen, but when he reached the bottom of the stairs, he only found silence, a heavy, dense, wrong silence. "Siti?" he called, entering the kitchen. The kitchen was immaculate, cold. Nothing was on the stove. The curtains were closed. On the central marble island, where breakfast was usually served, there was only one object, a torn notebook paper, folded in half, with his name written on it in a trembling hand. Next to the paper, the set of house keys and the yellow rubber gloves, neatly folded. Marcus's heart gave a violent lurch. He rushed to the note, unfolding it with hands that were starting to sweat. "Mr. Marcus, thank you for defending me and for treating me like a person. I will never forget your kindness, but I cannot stay. Miss Brenda is right about one thing. I do not belong in your world. If I stay, I will only bring you problems, shame, and scandal. I heard what she said about taking the girls away from you. I would rather die than be the cause of your daughters being separated from you. They need their father, not a helper who only causes trouble. Please tell my girls that I love them with all my soul. Tell them to eat well, be brave, and take good care of them. Sir, you are a good man. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Goodbye forever, Siti." Marcus read the letter twice, 3 times, refusing to process the words. Goodbye forever. He felt a physical blow, as if the air had been ripped from his lungs. She was gone. She had left to protect him. She had believed Brenda's poisonous lies and had sacrificed herself in silence. "No," Marcus shouted, slamming his fist on the table, crumpling the letter. "Siti, no." At that moment, fast footsteps were heard coming down the stairs. The triplets appeared in the kitchen doorway in their pajamas, rubbing their eyes. "Daddy?" Chloe asked, startled by the shout. "What's wrong? Where is Siti?" "We're hungry." Marcus turned to them. His face, distorted by pain and frustration, frightened them. He tried to compose himself, but it was useless. How could he tell them that the only real maternal figure they had ever had left because of his ex-fiancée's malice? "My darlings," he started, kneeling to their level. Siti had to go. "Go where?" Shanti asked, her lower lip starting to tremble. "To the market?" "No, darling. She went home. Far away. She'll be back for lunch," Janice insisted. Marcus shook his head, feeling his soul break. No, my life, she's not coming back. The three girls crying was heartbreaking. It wasn't a tantrum. It was a wail of deep loss. They threw themselves onto the floor, shouting Siti's name, inconsolable. Marcus hugged them, trying to stem the tide of sadness, but he himself felt a huge void. The house, without her, was once again a cold GCB, a luxurious mausoleum without life. Hours passed. The girls refused to eat breakfast. They locked themselves in their room, hugging the pillows that still smelled of her. Marcus, desperate, called the helper agency. "I need Siti's address," he demanded over the phone. "I'm sorry, Mr. Tan," replied the receptionist's metallic voice. "Due to privacy policies, we cannot give out personal data. Furthermore, Siti's file indicates she does not have a fixed address in the city, only a post office box in a village 6 hours from here. She formally resigned this morning via email." Marcus hung up the phone, frustrated. He felt helpless. He had millions of dollars, private jets, influence, but he couldn't find the woman who had taken the light from his house. He entered the girls' room to try to calm them down. They were sitting in a circle on the floor with red eyes. Shanti was holding an old teddy bear that had a voice recording mechanism, one of those toys that repeat what you say. "I want to listen to Siti," Shanti sobbed, squeezing the bear's paw. "Shanti, Siti never recorded anything on the bear," Chloe told her sadly. "Yes, she did. One day we were playing hide and seek, and she hid in the closet with the bear. I heard her talking to it." Marcus approached, intrigued. "Can I see that, Shanti?" he asked gently. The girl handed him the bear. Marcus pressed the play button on the left paw. There was a crackle of static and then a voice. But it wasn't Siti's voice. It was Brenda's voice. Marcus froze. The recording must have been from a few weeks ago, perhaps accidentally activated or left there on purpose by destiny. "Listen to me closely, you stupid brats." Brenda's unmistakable voice hissed from the toy with a blood-curdling tone. "Asterisk, I'm sick of your whining. If you tell your father I didn't feed you today, I swear I'll give away this bear and all your toys to charity. Your father doesn't want you, understand? He only comes home because I make him feel guilty. If it weren't for me, he would have sent you to boarding school years ago. So, shut your mouths and smile for the photo." Asterisk. The recording ended with the sound of a thump, probably the bear being thrown against the wall. Marcus dropped the toy as if it burned him. The girls looked at him, terrified to hear the witch's voice again. But in Marcus's eyes, the pain gave way to a volcanic fury much more intense than the night before. Brenda had not only deprived them of food, she had destroyed their self-esteem. She had made them believe he didn't love them. That was psychological torture. And Siti had arrived at that battlefield and, without weapons, had healed those wounds with pure love, facing the monster in silence. Now he understood why Siti had left. It wasn't just fear for herself, it was terror that Brenda would carry out her threats against the girls. Siti had sacrificed herself to eliminate the reason for Brenda's anger. Marcus stood up. His sadness had evaporated, replaced by a steel determination. "No one will ever hurt you again," he swore, looking at his daughters. "And I promise you one thing, I'm going to bring Siti back, even if I have to turn over every stone in this country." He left the room, took out his phone, and dialed a private number. "I want the best private investigator in my office in 10 minutes, he ordered, as he ran down the stairs. "And prepare the helicopter. We're going to a village." The hunt had begun, but this time it wasn't for revenge. It was for redemption. Marcus wasn't going to let the woman of his life escape because of a lie. He was going to find her. He was going to beg her forgiveness on his knees. And he was going to ask her for something more than just to come back to work. He was going to ask her to stay forever. But while Marcus mobilized his resources, Siti was already on a dilapidated bus, crossing the mountains in the rain, crying as she looked out the window, believing she had done the right thing by disappearing from the millionaire's life forever. She didn't know he was already on his way. Alejandro's phone vibrated on the mahogany table of his company's conference room, interrupting the deathly silence that reigned in the room. It was 10 in the morning. Facing him, a team of 5 elite lawyers, the most expensive legal sharks in the city, waited for instructions with pens in hand. On the giant screen on the wall, a live Instagram broadcast was projected. It was Brenda. She was sitting in a luxury hotel suite in a white robe, her eyes strategically reddened, speaking into her phone camera with a broken voice that would have moved anyone who didn't know her true nature. More than 50,000 people were watching the live stream. "And that's why I had to run away last night," Brenda said, wiping away a non-existent tear. Asterisk, I'm scared, friends. I'm very scared. Marcus is a powerful man, and I'm just a woman who tried to care for his daughters, but he has anger issues. He threw me out into the street in the rain because I dared to question the helper he prefers. I fear for my safety and, above all, I fear for those girls. Asterisk. The comments in the video chat sped up furiously. How horrible. Stay strong, Vane. That monster must be reported. Justice for Brenda. Marcus observed the screen with a coldness that scared even his principal lawyer, Mr. Montalvo. There was no anger in his eyes, only the surgical precision of a man about to remove a tumor. Is it ready, Montalvo? Marcus asked without taking his eyes off the screen. Yes, Mr. Tan. The press release is drafted, and the lawsuit for defamation, slander, and child abuse is ready to be filed in court. But sir, releasing the security video and the teddy bear audio to the public is a nuclear measure. It will destroy her reputation forever. There will be no turning back. Marcus slowly turned to the lawyer. That woman threatened to take my daughters away from me. She threatened to send them to a children's home. She psychologically tortured 5-year-old children by telling them their father didn't love them. Marcus leaned over the table. I don't want to damage her reputation, Montalvo. I want to incinerate it. I want that when the day is over, no one in this country dares to believe a single word that comes out of her mouth. Do it now. Montalvo nodded and gave the order on his phone. On the giant screen, Brenda's broadcast continued. I just ask for justice, she was saying, sniffing. I just want the true. Suddenly, her expression changed. She stopped looking at the camera and looked at her own phone screen, reading the comments that were beginning to change drastically. Liar, they just leaked the video. You planted the jewelry on the poor woman. You're a monster. I heard the bare audio. Brenda to jail. Brenda's face paled in real time. Her performance crumbled. What? What are they talking about? She stammered, forgetting her victim role. That's false. It's a setup. Marcus grabbed the remote and turned off the screen. He didn't need to see more. Brenda was finished. Her social life, her credibility, and her threat had been neutralized in a matter of seconds. Now, only the important matter remained. The conference room door burst open, and Rivas, Marcus's private security chief, a seasoned former military man, entered, soaked by the rain and with a serious expression. Sir, we found her, Rivas said without preamble. Marcus jumped up, knocking over his chair. Where is she? It wasn't easy. She didn't use credit cards. She paid for everything in cash. But we checked the security cameras at the southern bus terminal. She bought a ticket at 5 a.m. for a town called Kuala Lipis. Marcus frowned. He knew the area. It was a remote, poor, mountainous region, difficult to access. What time did the bus leave? At 5:30. She's been on the road for 6 hours. Prepare the helicopter, Marcus ordered, walking towards the exit. We can't fly, sir. Rivas stopped him, blocking his path. The storm has worsened. There's a red alert in the mountains, winds of 80 kilometers per hour, and torrential rain. No pilot will take off in this weather. It's suicide. Marcus clenched his fists. He felt time slipping through his fingers like sand. If CT reached that village, she would be lost in the mountains. She could cross the border or disappear into some small town where no one asked questions. If he lost her today, he might never see her again. And his daughters would never forgive him for letting her go. Then we'll go by land, Marcus decided. Get the armored SUV. You drive. Sir, the mountain roads are dangerous in this weather. There's a risk of landslides. We should wait for the storm to pass. My daughters are at home crying because they lost the only mother they've known, Marcus shouted, losing his composure for the first time that morning. I'm not going to wait for the sun to rise. If I have to drive to the ends of the earth myself, I will. Move. 10 minutes later, a high-end black SUV sped out of the Tan Towers underground garage, cutting through the curtain of rain at full speed. Marcus was in the passenger seat, the GPS glowing on the dashboard, marking a red line that snaked towards the dark mountains on the horizon. Hello, Chloe answered the call home. Daddy? The small voice sounded small and scared. Chloe, listen to me closely. I'm going to find her. City? There was an immediate change in tone, a spark of hope. Yes, my darling. I'm going for her. I don't know how long it will take, but I'm not coming home without her. I promise. I need you to be the brave older sister now. Take care of your sisters. Tell them Daddy is on a rescue mission. Yes, Daddy, the girl exclaimed, and Marcus could hear the other two shouting in the background. Tell her we miss her. Tell her I made another drawing. I will tell her. I love you. Marcus hung up and looked at the road. The wipers worked frantically against the downpour. Kuala Lipis was 4 hours away in normal conditions. With this storm, it could be 6, or never. Step on the gas, Rivas, Marcus ordered, looking at his watch. That bus is old. They'll be going slow in this weather. We have to catch them before they reach the junction. Yes, sir. The engine roared, and the vehicle hurtled towards the storm, carrying a man who had conquered markets and corporations, but who now faced the greatest challenge of his life, recovering his family's heart before it was too late. The mountain road was a serpent of cracked asphalt and mud that twisted along the edge of the abyss. The rain fell with such violence that it seemed like the sky was collapsing onto the earth, turning the day into a premature, gray night. Inside the Siaricat transport, mountain transport, bus, the atmosphere was humid, cold, and smelled of burnt gasoline and tired humanity. Siti was sitting in the last row by the fogged window. She was wearing the same gray sweater she had left the GCB in, and her hands, without the yellow gloves for the first time in weeks, obsessively caressed the photo of her son that she kept in her pocket. She hadn't stopped crying since she got on, although she did so in silence, with that dignified resignation of someone who is accustomed to life taking away the good things as soon as she touches them. The bus gave a violent lurch as it took a sharp curve. The passengers screamed. The vehicle groaned, its old suspensions protesting against the water-filled potholes. "Careful, driver," shouted a woman carrying a chicken in a cage. "You're going to kill us." Siti closed her eyes and rested her forehead against the cold glass. Part of her wished the bus would never arrive. Returning to her village meant returning to misery, to loneliness, to looking at the phone, hoping for a call from the helper agency that might never come after abandoning her post. But what hurt her the most was not the future poverty, but the memory of the emotional richness she had just lost. She remembered Shanti's laughter when she tickled her, Chloe's serious look when she told her secrets, Janice's hugs, and she remembered Marcus. His dark eyes, his deep voice defending her at dinner, the way he held her hands. She had fallen in love with a fantasy, with a family that was not hers, and the price to pay was this immense void in her chest. "It's best for them," she repeated in a whisper, like a painful mantra. Brenda was right. I am a problem. Now they can be at peace. He will look for a wife of his social standing, a good mother, and the girls will forget me. Suddenly, the bus braked with a deafening metallic screech, throwing all the passengers forward. Siti hit her head on the seat in front. The engine coughed and died. The silence that followed was unsettling, broken only by the furious drumming of the rain on the roof. "What happened?" a man asked from the front. "Landslide," the driver announced, opening the door with a hiss of compressed air. "A tree and rocks are blocking the road. No one is passing." Siti looked out the window. Through the curtain of water, she saw a huge pine tree fallen across the road, blocking both lanes. They were trapped in the middle of nowhere, miles from any town, with the storm roaring above their heads. Meanwhile, 2 miles away, Marcus's SUV skidded in the mud. "Damn it," Rivas shouted, wrestling with the steering wheel to maintain control. "The road is washing away, sir. It's too dangerous." "Keep going," Marcus ordered, clinging to the door handle. His eyes scanned the road, looking for the bus's taillights. They had been chasing it for an hour, closing the distance, but nature seemed determined to stop them. "There," Marcus pointed. In the distance, between the mist and the rain, the intermittent red lights of a large stopped vehicle could be seen. "It's the bus," Rivas confirmed, braking cautiously. "Looks like they're blocked." The SUV stopped about 50 meters from the bus. The road was covered with stones and branches. They couldn't get any closer in the vehicle. "Stay here," Marcus said, opening the door. "Sir, wait. You don't have an umbrella, your suit." Rivas tried to stop him. Marcus didn't listen. He jumped onto the flooded asphalt. The freezing wind hit him like a slap, soaking his designer shirt and ruining his expensive Italian shoes in the first step over the puddle of mud. But he didn't care. He ran. He ran as he had never run in his life, ignoring the cold, ignoring the danger, his gaze fixed on the open door of the old bus. He arrived gasping at the vehicle's entrance. He climbed the slippery metal steps 2 by 2. The bus interior was dim. The passengers, humble country folk, fell silent when they saw the soaked man enter, dressed in a suit that cost more than the entire bus, his hair plastered to his forehead, and a look of wild desperation. "Siti!" Marcus shouted, his voice hoarse, filling the space. "Siti Gonzalez!" No one answered. The driver stood up with a wrench in his hand, suspicious. "Hey friend, who are you? Get off if you're not traveling." Marcus ignored him. He walked down the narrow aisle, looking row by row. He saw frightened, curious, tired faces. And then, in the last row, he saw a bowed head trying to hide. He saw a trembling hand clutching a photo. Siti. She slowly looked up. Her eyes were red and swollen. Seeing him there, soaked, gasping, looking both crazy and like a prince at the same time, she thought she was hallucinating from fever or sadness. "Mr. Marcus," she whispered, incredulous. Marcus reached her and fell to his knees on the dirty bus floor, ignoring the grease and dust. "Siti, for God's sake. Why did you leave? Why did you do this to me?" I had to do it," she stammered, starting to cry again. "For the girls. She said they would take your daughters away because of me, that I was a disgrace. I didn't want to ruin your life, sir." "You are not a disgrace," he told her vehemently, looking her in the eyes with an intensity that burned her soul. "You are the only real thing that has entered that house in years." Brenda lied. "She's the one who left. I kicked her out, Siti. I kicked her out for you." A murmur ran through the bus. The passengers, now witnesses to the most real telenovela scene of their lives, craned their necks to see. "You kicked her out?" Siti asked, trembling. "It's over. Brenda will never come near us again. I have proof of what she did. I have proof that she mistreated the girls." Marcus squeezed her hands tightly. "But my daughters won't stop crying since you left. They don't eat. They don't sleep. Chloe asked me if she was going to be alone again. Shanti talks to her teddy bear, hoping you will answer." Siti's tears rolled freely down her cheeks. "They are not just your girls, Siti," Marcus said, lowering his voice, creating an intimate space in the middle of the crowded bus. "They are ours, if you want them to be. I didn't come all this way to ask you to be the helper again. I didn't come to offer you a salary increase." Marcus let go of one of her hands and searched his wet pocket. He didn't pull out a ring. It wasn't the time yet, but he pulled out something more valuable. He pulled out the crumpled drawing that Chloe had made, the drawing where all 5 of them were included. "I came to ask you to come home, to your place. Chloe drew you as part of the family. And children always tell the truth." Siti looked at the drawing, wet from the rain falling from Marcus's jacket. She looked at the powerful man who was kneeling in the mud for her, and for the first time in her life, she allowed herself to believe she deserved to be happy. "The police won't take me?" she asked with a thread of a voice, the last fear speaking. Marcus let out a choked laugh, a mixture of relief and crying. "The only police you'll see will be the ones who come to take Brenda away if she dares to show up." He stood up and gently pulled her. "Let's go, Siti. The car is waiting. The girls are waiting. We have a dinner pending. Spaghetti, remember?" Siti stood up, picked up her old suitcase, looked at the bus passengers, who were now smiling, and some were even applauding timidly. "Let's go home," she said, and that word sounded different in her mouth. It was no longer a workplace. It was a destination. Marcus put his arm around her shoulders, protecting her, and together they walked down the bus aisle towards the exit. Outside, the storm was still roaring. Thunder shook the earth, but Marcus no longer cared. He was bringing the sun back to his GCB. They got off the bus and ran through the rain towards the armored SUV. Rivas was waiting for them with the door open and a discreet smile. "Mission accomplished, sir?" the security chief asked. Marcus looked at Siti, who was wiping the water from her face, smiling shyly but with a light in her eyes. "Mission accomplished, Rivas. Let's go. The princesses are hungry." The SUV turned around on the narrow road, leaving the stranded bus and Siti's past loneliness behind, and sped back to the city. The journey back would be long, but inside that car, for the first time, a true family was beginning to be built. And Marcus knew, as he glanced at Siti, that the next step would not be to hire her, but to make her fall in love with him. But that would be the final part of the story. The silence inside the armored SUV was no longer heavy or awkward. It was a silence filled with promises and newly recovered peace. The storm was behind them, both literally and metaphorically. As the vehicle devoured the miles back to the city, the rain stopped, leaving a clear sky, sprinkled with stars that shone with unusual intensity, as if the universe itself was celebrating the return. Marcus was driving now, having insisted that Rivas rest. He wanted to be in control of the steering wheel. He wanted to feel that he himself was bringing his family safely to the destiny they deserved. Next to him, in the passenger seat, Siti dozed from exhaustion, her head resting against the cold glass, still clutching Chloe's drawing, as if it were a winning lottery ticket. As they entered the town property, the GCB's lights were fully on. It looked like a lighthouse in the middle of the night. Marcus stopped the engine in front of the main entrance. Siti woke up startled, disoriented for a second, until she saw the imposing facade of the house. Fear returned to her eyes for an instant, the fear of not belonging, the fear that everything had been a feverish dream on the bus. "Are you ready?" Marcus asked, turning off the car lights and turning to her. His voice was soft, devoid of the millionaire's arrogance who had arrived days earlier. It was the voice of a man in love who didn't yet dare to confess the extent of his feelings. "I'm scared, sir," she admitted. "Not for me, but for what people will say. You are a tan. I am just me." Marcus leaned over the center console, gently took her chin, and made her look at him. "You are the woman who saved my daughters when I was too blind to see the truth. That makes you nobler than anyone in my social circle. In this house, from today on, you are in charge as much as I am. Understood?" Siti nodded, swallowing, and felt a warmth rise in her cheeks. Marcus got out of the car and ran to open her door, a gentlemanly gesture he had never had with Brenda. As soon as the key turned in the front door lock, a loud noise was heard. It wasn't thunder, it was footsteps, small, quick steps running across the foyer's wooden floor. Siti. The scream was triple and deafening. Chloe, Janice, and Shanti, who had been watching from the living room window regardless of the hour, launched themselves at her with the force of a hurricane of love. Siti fell to her knees on the foyer floor, laughing and crying at the same time, buried under a mountain of arms, flannel pajamas, and sticky kisses. "You came back! Daddy brought you back!" Shanti cried, kissing her cheeks. "I told my bear you would come back. We thought you were gone forever," Janice sobbed, clinging to Siti's neck as if her life depended on it. Marcus watched the scene from the doorframe, his hands in his pockets and a lump in his throat. Seeing his daughters so happy, so complete, confirmed that he had made the best decision of his life when he got into that car in the rain. Rivas, the security chief, passed by him carrying Siti's old suitcase. "Should I take this to the service room, sir?" Rivas asked, softly. Marcus shook his head without taking his eyes off his new family. "No. Take that suitcase to the main floor guest room, the blue suite. Siti will no longer sleep in the basement. And tomorrow, I want you to contact the best decorator in the city. We are going to redecorate that room to her taste." Rivas smiled, nodded respectfully, and disappeared down the hallway. The night was long, but full of light. No one wanted to sleep. The girls dragged Siti to the kitchen, not for her to serve them, but to seat her in a chair and serve her an imaginary banquet of biscuits and milk themselves. Meanwhile, Marcus, clumsy but enthusiastic, tried to prepare hot cocoa for everyone. The next morning, the reality of the outside world tried to break into their bubble. As they had breakfast, all together at the table with Siti seated to Marcus's right, the millionaire's phone rang. It was his lawyer. "Mr. Tan, turn on the news," Montalvo's deep voice said. Marcus grabbed the remote and turned on the small kitchen screen. On the morning news, Brenda's image appeared, but it wasn't the glamorous image she usually projected. It was a police mugshot. Scandal in high society. Brenda Chia, ex-fiancée of magnate Marcus Tan, detained this morning at the international airport while attempting to board a private flight to the Cayman Islands. Authorities found jewelry reported as stolen from the Tan GCB months ago in her luggage, in addition to digital evidence linking her to cases of defamation and extortion. The prosecution has also opened an investigation for child abuse after the filtering of disturbing audios. Siti covered her mouth, scared. The girls looked at the screen, confused. Marcus immediately turned off the television. "It's over," he said firmly, looking at the four women in his life. "The monster is gone. No one will ever hurt us again. Will she go to the bad people's jail?" Chloe asked with a mix of fear and curiosity. "Yes, my dear, where she can't yell at anyone ever again." Siti sighed, feeling a ton weight lift from her shoulders. Divine and earthly justice had acted. Months passed. The Tan GCB underwent a radical transformation. Cold, untouchable designer furniture was replaced by comfortable sofas you could jump on. Heavy curtains were opened to let the sun in. The garden, once a museum of geometrically pruned plants, was filled with toys, a treehouse, and a puppy Labrador that Marcus adopted for the girls. Siti did not wear the uniform again. Marcus formally hired her as a home coordinator and private tutor, an invented title to justify a generous salary and give her the authority she deserved. Although, in practice, she was the heart of the house. She studied in the mornings while the girls were at school, finishing the high school education she had abandoned due to poverty. And in the afternoons, the house was filled with laughter and schoolwork. But there was something else floating in the air. A sweet and electric tension that grew daily between the millionaire and the former helper. Marcus started coming home early from work every day, began to forget his business trips, and every time their eyes met across the table during dinner, time seemed to stop. One Friday night, 6 months after the storm incident, the scene from the beginning was repeated, but corrected and amplified. Marcus arrived home with a bouquet of wildflowers. Not the pompous red roses he bought for Brenda, but simple, colorful field flowers, Siti's favorites. He entered the dining room. The scene was a mirror of the past, but without the shadows. Chloe, Janice, and Shanti were seated at the table, praying, but this time they were not wearing rigid dresses, but comfortable clothes. And facing them, presiding over the table with a natural elegance that no money could buy, was Siti. She no longer wore yellow gloves. She wore a simple sky blue dress that highlighted the sparkle in her eyes. "Amen," the three girls said in unison. Marcus cleared his throat from the doorway. Foreheads turned. 4 identical smiles of happiness greeted him. "Daddy!" the girls shouted, but they didn't stand up, waiting for the protocol they had established. Marcus walked to the table, put down the briefcase which now weighed less because it carried fewer burdens, and approached Siti. He handed her the flowers. "They are for you," he said, and his fingers brushed hers as he handed over the bouquet, maintaining the contact for a second longer than necessary. "They are beautiful, Marcus," she said, calling him by his name for the first time without the sir, a huge step they had taken just a week ago. "They smell like spaghetti," Marcus said, inhaling the air theatrically. "My favorite dish." The girls laughed. "You said your favorite was caviar," Chloe accused him, giggling. "That was before I knew what good food was," he replied, winking at Siti. Marcus took off his suit jacket, loosened his tie, and to the delight of his daughters, grabbed an apron that read, "The Pasta Boss," and put it on over his immaculate white shirt. "Can I serve today?" he asked Siti, with playful humility. "Only if you promise not to throw the sauce on the tablecloth," she replied, playing along with a spark of flirtation in her gaze that made Marcus's heart beat faster. Marcus served the plate steaming red spaghetti, with lots of basil and Parmesan cheese. He sat at the head of the table. But this time, the chair at the other end was not far away. They had changed the table to a round one to be closer together. "Before we eat," Marcus said, placing his hands on the table, palms up, "I want to give thanks." The girls and Siti imitated him, intertwining their hands with his. A circle of unbreakable energy was formed. "Thank you, God," Marcus began, in a firm voice, "for removing the blindfold from my eyes. Thank you for the storm that brought me calm. Thank you for my 3 princesses who were braver than me. And thank you." He gently squeezed Siti's hand. "Thank you for bringing Siti back to us, because without her, this house was just walls and a roof. With her, it is a home." Siti looked up, her eyes wet. Marcus was looking at her intently, and in that gaze, she read the question he would ask her very soon, perhaps in a month, perhaps at Christmas, with a ring that was already stored in his safe. A question that had nothing to do with employment contracts and everything to do with forever. "Amen," Siti whispered. "Amen," the girls shouted. "Let's eat," Marcus ordered. The sound of forks clinking against plates, laughter, school anecdotes, and complicit glances filled the dining room. Outside, the night was dark, but inside, under the warm lamplight, an improbable family, forged in pain and healed by love, enjoyed the simplest and most delicious dish in the world. Marcus looked at Siti. She smiled back, tomato sauce at the corner of her lip, and he knew with absolute certainty that he was the richest man in the world, not because of his millions, but because of what was sitting at that table. And so, between laughter and spaghetti, the true chapter 1 of their lives began. Fin.